but also I was afraid of speaking up, of speaking my mind, let alone starting a conversation. For me, years ago, that would have been like a certain death. You have already mastered English as your second language. Now it's time for you to start mastering your social skills in English as a non-native speaker. So today I am going to show you how to start a conversation in English as a non-native speaker. This is a skill that takes practice and takes patience for us to totally master. And it is something that will help you elevate and enhance your social skills in English, because the whole point for you to learn English was to communicate in that language, to start making connections and start knowing people that can add up to your life, either personally, professionally, whatever it is that you want. Starting conversations in English, although intimidating, it's a power move. And I'm sure that with the right approach and the right strategy, you can master this ability to a point in which you can help yourself but to start conversations in English with whoever it is that you want. Before starting, I want you to have in mind that bilingualism is already a very empowering ability. It is a skill that can open a handful of doors for you. However, I know many people that are bilingual and even polyglots, but ironically, they lack social skills. So they are closing themselves to opportunities that only interaction and conversations can give to them, right? So have in mind that being bilingual is a first step, but our second step is to actually use our second language in a way that can open even more doors for us. Because real life and real opportunities occur when we talk with people, when we create connections and we get to know other people and we let other people know ourselves. All right, so let's start. So I'm going to start giving you the first element that I think is really important to master the skill of starting conversations in English as your second language. And the first step that I want to give you is to start thinking about how would you do that in your first language. How would you open a conversation in your first language? So the first step that I recommend you to apply is to think, how would you start conversations in your first language? How would you do it in your native language? This will help you connect to your own authentic communication style. And this also will help you practice natural phrasing. Natural phrasing means that you identify what phrases or what expressions you are most prone to use in your first language and find the equivalent in English. All right? So note that it is not a translation, a direct translation from your native language to English. It is finding the equivalent of that expression or the most common expressions that you use in your first language into English. In that way, you avoid translating, like mistakenly translating those expressions in a way that don't make sense in English, right? We often make that mistake as non-native speakers, but it is really helpful to really reasoning into what are those expressions that you most commonly use in your first language and finding its equivalent in English. At the same time, you establish your communication style, because maybe you are more like, hey, what's up, guy, instead of how you doing, guy. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the main objective for this step. Like find your own communication style and find its equivalent in English. The second tip that I want you to start applying into your practicing of starting conversations is to adapt to your surroundings. And by adaptation to your surroundings, I not only mean, of course, you should recognize where you are, what's the place where you're at, but also start using the context in which you are in a way that's creative and in a way that gives you ideas to communicate and to create words and sentences that are colorful and that have like your own seal to it, that have your own personality to it. So yeah, of course, it is different to communicate or to start a conversation at a coffee shop than in class or in a workplace. These contextual elements dictate how you will communicate, what words will you use, what tone, what kind of intonation, and the vocabulary, the lexicon, and all the linguistic elements that you will need to communicate effectively and appropriately to that context. And it works for every language. But I encourage you to really get creative on your words and what you say. Like, it is not necessary for you to be a clown or for you to be an entertainer or a poet, but try to play with the words and try to play with the surroundings, with the place that you're in, with the things that you see, with the people that are around you. Try to make inferences into which kind of stuff would be interesting to talk about. What kind of elements the environment and the context give you to start a conversation that's not only interesting, but is inspiring and colorful. Something to remember here is that a bilingual mind is by nature a creative mind. All right, so use that power not only to communicate and to get a message across and to introduce yourself, but also to present new ways to describe your surroundings, to talk about your opinions about the world and about the context and the surroundings within you are. So formulating colorful, original, and interesting opinions about the world beforehand, before even starting a conversation, could be really helpful to actually start a conversation with someone, like in the real life, in the battlefield. All right, so I encourage you to start thinking how your opinions of the world could be linguistically be presented in a more original and colorful and vivid way, so start with that. The third tip that I want you to think on and to start practicing, if possible, is to ask open-ended questions. This is very intuitive. Why should we ask open-ended questions? Because if you are interested in talking with someone, in starting a conversation, in making yourself known and know the other person, the most logical thing is to give them something to talk about, is to give them space to express themselves, to think about how they want to be perceived and all the mental processes that occurs before speaking. And this will only happen if you ask open-ended questions. Because how would you feel if you really want to say who you are and someone comes to you and asks you something super dull and boring, like, hey, do you work here? You will be like, yes. But how different would it be if that person asks you, so what's the most interesting thing about working here? That will give you such an amount of space and mental leverage to start expressing yourself and to start expressing what's interesting about working there, and the conversation will be a lot more fluent and a lot more interesting and fun, because talking is fun. Speaking and having conversations is fun. You have to have that in mind. If you start this with a mindset of, oh my God, I'm so shy, I have social anxiety, people will laugh at me, my English is no good, this is not the place for me, I should go right away. No, that's no way. That's not the right way in which you can have a successful conversation and connection with someone. You should start with the mindset of, yeah, having conversations is so fun, and I'm going to have so much fun speaking to these people. I'm going to be a different person once I talk to that person. It's all about mindset, really, because when you have the mindset and the tone of your energy, of your presence already in motion, the conversation will flow naturally and you don't have to think a lot. Because when you think a lot in conversations, that's when mistakes happen. That's why people That's when you come across as a nervous person, as a shy person, when maybe you don't want to. The fourth step that I suggest you to apply is to use safe small talk topics. If you're an introverted person, or if you're a shy person, I don't know, maybe something that you think about a lot is how awful small talk is. Maybe you find it shallow or superficial or boring, whatever it is that you think about small talk. But let me tell you that you can know a lot about a person by the way they approach the small things of every day, the everyday small things. You can really tell a lot about a person by the way they view the simplest things of life, weather, the latest news, how the building is decorated. Those are small talk topics, but the way you express yourself about those things really says a lot about you. And that's, I mean, because for example, me personally, that's the way I get to know people. Like, what's your opinion about today's weather? Let me hear you talk about it. Let me hear how you express yourself about the weather. Do you like that it's raining? Do you like that it's sunny? Would you prefer to be at home right now reading a book, or do you prefer to be at the park running? Or do you prefer right now to be in a coffee shop just watching it rain? What? Like, I really want you to encourage you to start conversations with small talk topics, and do it in a way that the other person can really find interest in talking about that topic. That will come in handy the last tip, asking open-ended question. What could be an interesting open-ended question about weather? Think about it. Think about an interesting open-ended question about the weather and put it on the comments. I want to see how creative can you get about this, because I want to repeat this and I want you to keep it in your mind. You can know a lot about a person by the way they approach the little simplest things about everyday life. That will give you a lot of hints about how that person thinks, about what are the likes and dislikes of that person. So don't be afraid to start small talk. You don't necessarily have to start talking about the universe and philosophic topics. Just something as simple as the weather, or how beautiful the building is, or just anything that is in handy for you to start talking about. You have the power to make it interesting and to make it something everybody want to talk about, right? So start from there. Start from the small talk. Small talk can lead to really powerful and deep conversations. I tell you, in my experience, you start talking about the weather today and start and talking about the relevance of evolution in historical events, for example. One topic will lead to another. So that's what I want you to have in mind. Don't be afraid to small talk. Small talk is your friend. Small talk actually can help you get out of trouble when you don't know what to talk about. So fifth and last tip for today, to be a master in starting conversations in English as your second language, is simply to stay present and engage naturally in the conversation. Most conversations, we think we have to talk a lot. But we don't have to talk a lot. We don't have to be speaking. You can ask a question and then just listen. Listen, and from what the other person tells to you, you start picking from there. And then you can build a conversation just by listening and just by using what the other person is giving to you. So stop thinking about what to say next in the conversation and be more in the moment, listening to the other person. And by listening, I just don't mean the words they're saying, but start noticing their movements, their body language, their word choice, and keep on asking questions. Ask questions instead of just trying to demonstrate how much you know about certain topic. Ask questions about the other person. Be interested in them. Be genuinely interested in them. Because people, we love to talk about ourselves a lot. So if you have the opportunity to start a conversation with someone you are really interested in, either professionally, even romantically, ask questions and let them speak and listen. And something that I want to add and that many people are afraid of is it's okay to change the topic all of a sudden. It's okay. It's okay. If what the other person is telling you reminds you of something different, you can change the topic. It could make the conversation even more interesting. And the person could be like, oh yeah, I wouldn't, like, you are giving an experience to the other person. Because I'm sure you have seen in movies or in TV shows or soap operas or whatever it is, that people stick to one topic and then they don't find anything else to talk about. Like they talk about the weather. And I mean, you gotta get rid of the fear of talking. You gotta get rid of the fear of speaking about whatever it is that you want. If you feel like talking about food, but and you start a conversation from there, and then you feel like asking the other person about their last trip or what they think about certain book, don't be afraid to change the topic. It is actually awesome for the other person because you're giving them an experience in which they can express themselves about a lot of different things. So, in fact, I think it is really good to change topics and not talk about the same topic and trying to, like stretching and trying to find weird things to say about the same topic. No, it is not necessary to talk about the same topic. We as humans are so diverse. We are a whole universe. We are like a landscape. We have flowers and we have clouds and we have trees and we have rocks and little ants. Give opportunity to the other person to express all that they are. Well, not necessarily all that they are, but give them the freedom to talk about whatever it is that they want. And you, as the conversation started, should lead where the conversation is flowing. So don't be afraid to change the topic. Because you can change it, you can redefine it, you can go back, you can, there's a really lot of game that happens in a conversation. So I really encourage you to start practicing a lot more this ability, starting conversations. Start from simple things, from little things, from the greeting. Start saying hello to the other person. Start introducing yourself. And let the moment and let your surroundings and let your own creativity and the other person give you what it is that you need to start building that conversation and building that experience for you and for the other person. And don't be afraid to do this. I was afraid for so much time to even be in a conversation. I would be in a group, in a friend group, and just listen to them. And I wasn't interested first on the topic of the conversations in general, but also I was afraid of speaking up, of speaking my mind, let alone starting a conversation. For me, years ago, that would have been like a certain death. And I'm not even kidding. So don't be afraid to start conversations because it is a power move and it is the opportunity that can give you the chance to leave an impactful impression on the other person. When you start a conversation, it gives you the power to control how other people perceive you. All right. So there's a lot of game and a lot of space and a lot of things that you can create by just starting a conversation. So don't be afraid to do that. Okay, so this is all for today. However, I really like talking about this topic, and hopefully more videos related to this will come. So stay tuned and don't miss them because they're gonna be fire. Lots of things to learn, lots of things to practice, lots of advice that I want to give you from my own experience. And yeah, I think a lot of awesome things are coming in. Lots of awesome videos and topics and teachings are coming to this specific channel. So subscribe if you want to know more about all things professionalism, communication, success, self-development, and all that great stuff that can helps us being amazing human beings and extraordinary human beings. All right, comment whatever it is that you're thinking right now about this topic. Comment any ideas, comment questions, suggestions, complaints, whatever it is. I would really love to hear you, to read you what you have to say, and to interact with you a little, with you guys. Okay, so share this video with someone who may need it, and see you on a next one. Bye bye.